I've been a dancer since I was 10 years old, and when I did my first pantomime and got on the stage, the lights, the music and the adrenaline rush was absolutely amazing. And I thought then, this is probably what I want to do for the rest of my life. I was born Christine Moult in 1946 in Stockport, which is near Manchester, and we lived in Cheadle-Hulme, and I found out that I was adopted when I was 6 weeks old, but that's another story. My mum was a very keen pianist when she was young, and I think she'd always wanted to be on the stage, so consequently putting me to a dancing school, I think she wanted to live her life through me. I first was put to dancing when I was 6 years old and didn't really take to it. I tried again when I was 10 and really sort of enjoyed it and got the bug for doing it, and I did school plays and dancing displays and festivals, and as I say, I was juvenile in the local professional pantomimes. These are a couple of the costumes that I wore when I was in my early teens. This is, I think they've actually lasted quite well, considering the years that they've been in suitcases and goodness knows where. But we used to do a lot of, because I did sort of national dancing and ballet, modern tap, I used to do a national dance, which was the Mexican hat dance, where you had a big sombrero and you danced round it and everything. And this was unfortunately the top's gone, but the skirt and the petticoat still remain. So that's that one. And a lot of the things, one that I was very good at that I used to do in festivals, in competitions and that, was Highland and Scottish dancing. Highland dancing is when you do solo pieces, like the sword dance and the Highland fling and the chantreuse, which is another solo dance. As I say, that is part of it. I do have the socks and the bit that goes around the back and everything. And we used to always sort of practice doing sort of castanets. We'd stand around the piano and play the castanets for the Spanish dancers we did. I used to get a newspaper that I think is still about, called The Stage magazine, and in there at the back there were loads of auditions, and Bernard Delfont used to put his auditions in. So I went up to the Talk of the Town and I auditioned, and I got in at the Wellington Pier in Great Yarmouth, and that was the first summer show I had, and that was with Harry Worth and Billy Dainty. Getting up to Great Yarmouth, my dad drove me, and it was a very long way in those days with no motorways from Torquay. But once we got into Norfolk, I just loved the wide open spaces, and Great Yarmouth itself was just full of all the different shows, and it was just absolutely wonderful, and I really enjoyed being up here. The curtain was down, and so we were stood on the stage talking, and the drummer in the group, the Treble Tones, came down and started chatting to me, and said that they were going up to a club after the show to have a few drinks, and would I like to go up there? And I said, well, you know, yeah. And he said, well, you know, I'll wait for you. I said, no. I said, that's okay. I said, I'll take my mum home and I'll come on up and join you. When I got up there, they were all having a sort of a jamming session, and so I thought, oh dear, you know. And I saw Johnny Wiltshire, who was the leader of the Treble Tones, sitting at a table, and so I thought, well, I decided I'd go and join him and have a drink because you know, I wasn't going to sort of sit on my own somewhere. We'd appeared in a couple of shows together in the early 60s, but he was married, and He was a bit of a ladies' man, and although we had worked together, he'd never shown any interest in me. In 1968, Johnny and I got married, and his divorce had come through, and it seemed to be a long time in coming, but eventually we got there. In 1967, I found that I was pregnant with Johnny's child, and so dancing had to take a back seat. And when Kim was born, she was diagnosed shortly after her birth with having a dislocated hip. So she needed to have a lot of care and attention and that. So I just used to travel with Johnny and Kim, and as I say, just put the dancing on hold. In 1968, John got a summer season at the Wellington Pier in Great Yarmouth with Des O'Connor. I went and auditioned for a season in Great Yarmouth, and I managed to get the Britannia Pier with Jimmy Clitheroe and Donald Pearce. And I used to walk Kim up the pier, and when I was going on the stage, our dresser, a lovely elderly lady, used to keep her eye on Kim in the dressing room. After the season finished, because John was going to be touring extensively, I decided that I didn't want really to do any more in the way of dancing, because I actually wanted to be with Johnny, and I used to do a lot of the driving. So gave up my side of my career and concentrated on being with him and being a mum. In September 1971, we had another baby, Debbie, but unfortunately she was born with a weak heart, and in those days there wasn't the operations that they can do nowadays on very small babies, and she came in at about 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds. And in the January of 1972, sadly, she died. Just shortly after that, I found out I was pregnant again, and in the November of 72, we had another daughter called Amanda. It was great touring with Morecambe and Wise. They were such lovely days, and they were mainly weekends, and they used to call them bank raids, because they'd go into a theatre for 2 nights, the place would fill, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. They were real gentlemen tours, and we had such a laugh. Very often we would stay in the same hotel as Eric or Ernie, and we'd have evenings after the show where we'd go back and maybe have something to eat, and Eric would be like a wise old owl, and he'd sit and he'd talk about different things, and it was just magical, absolutely magical. 2 of the Royal Gala shows were at the Theatre Royal in Norwich, one in 1980 and one in 1982, and they were for Princess Alexandra and for Princess Margaret. Yet again, it took us back to Norfolk and the Theatre Royal in Norwich. And it was just such a lovely place, and it really did seem to embrace us. In 1998, we decided we were going to have a move, and we'd been in Bournemouth for 21 years. And as we'd always really liked Norfolk, we thought we'd come up and have a look round and see what there was. And we found this lovely house in Hingham, and decided that's where we were going to be, and that's where we lived for the next few years. It was a very sad time, and I was very, very much in shock, and I really didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do. I put the house on the market and sold it quite quickly in France, and we'd always said that if we ever had to move back to the UK, the one place we would move back to would be Norfolk, because we'd always enjoyed it up here. And so we came back here, and I flew John's body home, and we went to Colney Wood, as we'd seen that when we lived in Hingham. We'd seen that being built, and we'd always sort of joked that probably that's where we'd end up, in a woodland burial place. And so that's where we decided as a family, you know, that he was going to be laid to rest. Looking back on my life, I have had such a wonderful life. Johnny and I had rows like any other couple do, but for me, being with him was just magical. You know, I could have pursued the career as a dancer, but I don't think I would have had the enjoyment and the fulfillment of travelling, which I enjoyed doing, and going to so many different places with him, and being with all the stars and the shows that he was associated with. Nothing was planned in our lives. We didn't actually plan anything, but everything just slotted in, and it was just wonderful.